Welcome back to another tale you probably shouldn't be listening to in the dark. But if you're like me, you will anyway. Tonight's story comes with a warning. If you've ever inherited an old house, you might want to check what's still living in it. I never believed in the supernatural. I'm not saying I was above fear, but I've always been the guy to rationalize everything. Creaky pipes? Old house? Bad dreams? Stress? Sleep paralysis? Just a glitch in your brain chemistry. There was always a scientific explanation. Once, my friends dared me to spend the night in an old, supposedly haunted, dilapidated house on the edge of town. They freaked out at every creak, every gust of wind, and barely slept a wink. Me? I slept like a baby on a rotting couch. The next morning, everyone walked out in one piece, and I'd made my point. There's no such thing as the supernatural. Science explains everything. That was until I moved into my grandmother's old house. She passed away last year and left it to me in her will. A modest two-bedroom tucked away on the outskirts of Pennsylvania. I wasn't planning to stay forever, just long enough to renovate and maybe sell. At the time, I was between jobs. Fresh out of college, all my friends had moved to big cities to chase their careers, while I was still figuring things out. I liked the house, but I also liked bars, restaurants, people, none of which were really options out in this neck of the woods. It was quiet. Too quiet, actually. I lived alone. No pets, no traffic. The nearest neighbor was a mile down the road. But I was used to solitude. Honestly, I thought the peace and quiet would finally help me finish the novel I'd been putting off. The first few nights were uneventful. I stripped peeling plaster from the living room walls, ordered supplies online, paint samples, scrapers, brushes, whatever I thought I'd need to spruce the place up. Then, things started to shift. It began with waking at odd hours, always around 3:30 a.m. Not from nightmares, just this heavy feeling, like something was off, like the air itself was holding its breath. I'd lie there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering what had stirred me, before eventually drifting back to sleep. Then came the noises. One night, I jolted awake and immediately noticed the creak of the light wood flooring, soft, deliberate, like footsteps moving down the hallway. My first thought was, intruder. Heart pounding, I locked the bedroom door and waited, straining to hear the doorknob rattle. But there was only silence. After a while, confused and unsure, I grabbed the longest knitting needle I could find from a basket my grandma had left in the corner, still full of old yarn and tools. Armed, I slowly opened the door. Nothing. The hallway was dark. Still. Empty. I stood there for a while, convinced the solitude was playing tricks on me. Then I checked every door and window. All locked, all secure. Eventually, I went back to bed. But that was only the beginning. From that night onward, I heard the footsteps every night. Slow, deliberate, always stopping just outside my bedroom door. And every time I opened it, nothing. Just that thick, oppressive silence that only exists in old houses. It didn't make sense. And that was what really started to get under my skin. I decided I had to put an end to it. Figure it out. So one night, I left the bedroom door open. That was the night everything changed. I woke again at 3:30. Same sinking feeling. Except this time, I couldn't move. It wasn't quite sleep paralysis. I could blink, breathe, even twitch a little. But I couldn't sit up. It was like my body knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. Then, I saw it. At the foot of my bed. A silhouette, not moving, not breathing, just there. Tall, misshapen. Too broad at the top, tapering into long, crooked limbs. It wasn't casting a shadow. It was the shadow, pitch black, swallowing every bit of darkness around it. I stared, blinked, blinked again. It didn't vanish. A cold sweat slid down my cheek. My chest tightened. My heart thundered in my ears. It just stood there. Then, without warning, it moved. A sudden jolt, a full-body twitch that made the air ripple around it like a glitch in reality. That was enough to break me. I shot upright, smacked the lamp on, heart hammering, hand reaching for the knitting needle I'd left by my bed. But it was gone. Gone, like it had never been there. The next morning, I told myself I imagined it. Stress, fatigue. Maybe I was finally cracking. I wanted to believe that. Because the alternative was something I'd spent my whole life denying. But I couldn't ignore what happened the next night. This time, I closed the bedroom door and shoved a chair beneath the knob. I left the lamp on. I woke up at the same time, 3:30. Groggy. The lamp flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Then, movement. A shift in the shadows. Something peeled itself off the wall. It flickered and appeared at the foot of the bed. It didn't move, just stood there, watching me. Then it flickered again. Closer. Now right next to the bed. No eyes, no mouth, no features. But I felt it watching me. This continued for 4 more nights. Each time it edged closer, inch by inch, never touching, never speaking, just watching. By the 5th night, it was right beside me. I could feel it, an unnatural cold rolling off it like fog. I could hear it too, faint, like wind howling through broken glass. By that morning, I snapped. It had been 5 nights of this, and my belief that there had to be a scientific explanation? Yeah, that was starting to fall apart. I packed a bag and checked into a motel, slept with the lights on, stayed there for days, just long enough to convince myself it had been a breakdown, a hallucination, anything but what I feared it really was. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to go back, told myself I'd imagined it all. But when I walked into the house, I found something on the far bedroom wall, something that hadn't been there before. A dark shape, burned into the wood, like a shadow, like soot. But it wasn't smudged. It was permanent. I didn't stay in that house again. I booked an Airbnb and stayed there for the rest of my time in town. Weeks later, while sorting through some of my grandmother's stuff, I found a journal. Hers. She'd written about him. It started appearing a few days ago. Every night at 3:30, standing at the foot of her bed, watching, closer and closer. She never told anyone, not her church group, not her kids. She believed speaking about it would make it stronger. The last entry was just one line. It's sitting beside me now. That sentence sent a shiver straight through me. Why did it take its time? Why stand there night after night, inching closer? Did it enjoy watching the fear on our faces? Or was it something more sinister, something that fed off it? I packed up everything she owned and put it into storage. The house was sold a few months later. The new owners never reported anything strange. They've lived there 2 years now. No complaints. Which makes me wonder, was it just in my head? Or did that thing attach itself to something I moved into storage? Something Grandma bought at a flea market, perhaps? Something that had been haunting her ever since? I haven't touched those boxes since. Haven't even looked at them. And honestly, I'm scared to. Because if that thing is tied to something in there, I don't want it in my home. Lately, I've been thinking maybe I should just sell everything. Or maybe just burn it all. What do you think I should do? People say teenagers think they're invincible, and I was no exception. At 15, I thought I knew everything. I was cocky, angry, and honestly, kind of a brat. Looking back, I destroyed, damaged, and defaced just about everything I could get my hands on. I guess I had this twisted sense of self-entitlement, like the world owed me something. This happened back when I still lived with my parents, in a small rural town in upstate New York. We didn't have many neighbors, and there wasn't much for a teenager to do. You couldn't walk to a store or diner, just fields, trees, and long, winding roads. Isolated. That night, I'd gotten into yet another screaming match with my dad. I don't even remember what it was about. Probably something stupid, like not doing my chores or mouthing off. But in the moment, I didn't care. I yelled something cruel, slammed the door, and stormed out of the house. I didn't take a phone, not even a jacket. It had started to rain. Warm air rose from the ground, and that earthy smell you get right before a downpour filled my nostrils. I wrapped my arms around myself, still riled up, replaying the argument in my head. My dad didn't understand me. He didn't even try to see things from my point of view. It was always his way or the highway. Frustrated, I kicked a rock and watched it sail off into the dark, landing a few meters away. For some reason, that gave me a weird sense of satisfaction. I was full of teenage pride, and maybe, deep down, I wanted them to worry. I figured I'd walk it off. Just keep going until I cooled down and came back on my terms. I followed the old country road that curved past our mailbox and disappeared into the woods. There were no streetlights, just my reflection flickering in puddles and the soft hiss of rain against the leaves. Deep in the woods, there was an old tree house someone had built long ago, way before even my parents' time. But it was still standing, still sturdy. Whenever I wanted to be alone, I'd always end up there. It sat a few meters off the ground, tucked between thick branches. Inside were bits and pieces left behind by whoever built it. Black and white photos of a little boy and his dad in front of a horse. Farm animals grazing in the background. There were old toys, faded balls, and other little knickknacks scattered around. After about 30 minutes of walking, the anger began to wear off. I was soaked. My sneakers squelched with every step. But I couldn't turn back, not yet. Going back now would feel like losing the fight. So I kept walking, still heading for the treehouse. I remember passing a small, broken-down bus stop, just a rusted bench and a cracked plexiglass shelter. That was the last familiar landmark before things got strange. That's when I first heard it. Footsteps, not loud, not close, just echoing mine. Every time I stopped, they stopped. Every time I moved, they followed, half a second behind. I kept glancing over my shoulder, but there was nothing. Just the curve of the road disappearing into trees. I told myself it was probably an animal, maybe water dripping from the branches. Then came the whisper. A voice. Soft. Low. Male. It whispered my name. Not shouted, not called, just breathed it into the wind. Matthew. It didn't sound like it came from behind me. It felt like it came from everywhere. Like the trees themselves had whispered it. I froze, straining to hear past the rain pattering on leaves and soaking into the ground. Just moments ago, the air had been warm and heavy. Now it felt cold, sharp. The breeze brushing my face was icy. A heavy sense of foreboding settled over me, thick and suffocating, like the whole forest had gone still. Even the frogs and crickets had fallen silent, as if something was waiting, watching. My breath fogged in the air. The cold started to seep into my bones. And that's when I saw it. At the bend in the road behind me stood a tall figure. I blinked a few times, brushing rain from my eyelashes. But it was still there, a dark shape walking toward me. At first, I thought it was just a person, maybe a neighbor, out late. But something felt off. I kept walking, faster now. That feeling in my gut turned sour. Every few steps, I cast a glance over my shoulder. Each time, the figure seemed closer. I slowed. I was about to call out, say hello, but the words never left my mouth. My eyes widened as I noticed how it moved. At first, it had been too far, too dim to tell. But now, up close, its movement set off every alarm in my head. It was wrong, jerky, shimmering, like a glitch in reality. And then, suddenly, it was closer. Not walking, not stepping, just gone from one spot, then reappeared nearer. I could see it clearly now. It wasn't a person. It was all shadow, no face, no features. Just pitch black, darker than the night around it. It wasn't draped in darkness. It was darkness, a void, a thing that swallowed light whole. And it was getting closer. Not by walking. It twitched forward, flickering in and out of place. 1 second it was 10 feet away, then 7, then 5. That's when the panic truly hit. I bolted. My sneakers slipped on the wet asphalt, skidding in every direction. I lost my footing and face-planted into a deep puddle. Dazed, soaked, mud in my mouth. I lifted my head and saw it, a few meters away. That faceless shape, looming, silent. Tendrils of black smoke rose off its body like it was burning in reverse. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. Just a breathless wheeze. I scrambled to my feet, palms scraping against the road, legs trembling, and I ran. Hard. I was closer to the treehouse by then, so I made a beeline for it, hoping I could lose whatever that thing was in the forest and hide until it disappeared. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I didn't want to know how close it was. I just ran, praying I wouldn't trip again. Dodging potholes, sucking air into my burning lungs. I don't know how long I kept going. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. My legs throbbed. My chest felt like it was caving in. But that thing, whatever it was, never made a sound, never spoke, never stopped, just followed. I reached the ladder and scrambled up it, 2 rungs at a time. I dove inside the treehouse and slammed the hatch shut behind me, jamming a wooden stool beneath the handle. Then I collapsed. I sat there for what felt like hours, even though my watch told me it was only 9:30. Eventually, once my breathing slowed, I crept toward the window and peeked outside. Nothing. I moved to the other window, this one facing west, toward the denser part of the woods. At first, I didn't see anything. Then something shifted. It stepped out of the shadows. Same tall figure, same disjointed posture. Head tilted to the side in a way that made my stomach drop. I couldn't see eyes in that faceless void where its face should have been, but I felt it staring at me. A strangled scream ripped from my throat, and I stumbled backward into the treehouse. Heart racing, mind spiraling. I didn't know what to do. But one thing was clear. I couldn't stay here all night. Not with whatever that thing was, still out there, and the forest growing darker by the second. I knew I had to make a run for it. Years ago, I'd tied a rope to one of the large branches outside the treehouse to use as a swing. I figured I could use it now to get to the ground fast and make a break for home. I burst out of the door, leapt, and grabbed the rope, sliding down fast, scraping my palms. I hit the ground running, not even bothering to look where I landed. But when I finally dared a glance over my shoulder, it was right there, standing next to me. Pitch black from head to toe. Not clothing, just a void. A living hole punched into the world. One of its arms was reaching out toward me. I threw myself to the ground to get out of its reach, skinning my elbows as I half crawled, half stumbled forward, then bolted. My lungs screamed and my legs burned, but I didn't stop. I just ran. The rain had stopped, thankfully, making it easier to hear the thing behind me. And that was the worst part. There was no sound. Nothing but my footsteps and frantic breath. When the soft glow of our porch light broke through the trees, I almost cried. I charged up the steps and burst through the front door and froze. My mom was sitting on the couch, pale, eyes wide like she'd just seen a ghost. She stood up slowly and said, You're soaking wet. We just found your room empty 10 minutes ago. Where did you go?" I blinked. "What? I've been gone for over an hour." That's when my dad came in from the kitchen, frowning. "You were just upstairs. We heard you stomping around." I shook my head. "No, I wasn't. I swear I've been out there. Something was chasing me." They exchanged a look. Then I told them everything. The footsteps, the whisper, the figure, the way it flickered, how it was like darkness itself. My mom believed me. She always believed that kind of thing. My dad didn't say much, but he didn't roll his eyes either. What still unsettles me the most, though, they said they heard me upstairs, walking around, moving things, acting like my usual bratty self. But I know I wasn't home, and whatever they heard up there, it wasn't me. We all went upstairs and looked around. The room was empty, nothing out of place, no signs anyone had been there. But the next day, we found footprints on the road leading toward our house. Just one set, bare feet, long, narrow, dragging slightly, like whoever or whatever made them didn't quite know how to walk. They led straight to the edge of our porch, and then stopped. That house has long since been sold. I've moved across the country, started over, but I've never forgotten the feeling of being followed that night. What still haunts me, though, is what my parents told me afterward. They said I came back into the house 20 minutes before I actually did. Said I didn't say a word, just stomped up the stairs and shut myself in my room. They heard me walking around, moving things, being my usual bratty self. So they left me alone. But I know I wasn't there. I was out in the woods, being chased by something that wasn't human. And I can't stop wondering, was that thing in the woods and the version of me that came home somehow connected? Was it a doppelganger? Did it plan to replace me, assimilate me, become me? What would have happened if it had caught me? And more importantly, has anyone else ever experienced something like this? Because sometimes, especially when I wake in the middle of the night, I still feel it. That presence, watching me. And I wonder, Did I really escape? I'm in my 20s, and until about a year ago, I was stuck in one of those toxic on-again, off-again relationships that drag on way past their expiration date. He was my first love, and for a long time, I thought he'd be my only one. But after the last breakup, after I caught him cheating on me yet again, this time with a male colleague he never even told me about, I snapped. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the lying, the secrets, the constant paranoia. Now discovering that he was bisexual as well just expanded the field of people he could hurt me with, and I was already barely holding on. So, I left. Not just the apartment, not just the city. I left the state. I moved to Ellijay, Georgia, a quiet little town in the mountains. Got a job as a dental assistant while re-enrolling to finish my dentistry degree. Something I dropped out of twice thanks to him. And money problems. Here, life finally had rhythm. I started jogging in the mornings or evenings, trying to stick to a healthier lifestyle. Then I'd study late into the night. It wasn't exciting, but it felt safe. Or at least I thought so. One night, around 1 a.m., I just couldn't sleep. My chest felt tight, and the apartment felt too quiet. Maybe I was on the verge of a panic attack. I threw on my windbreaker and stepped out onto the porch to clear my head. Just needed some air. Without really thinking, I went down the steps and started walking along the dimly lit street. The moon was full. The sky was clear. All the houses were dark. Everyone had already gone to bed. There were no cars on the road, no soul in sight, no wind. Just the soft crunch of my sneakers on gravel. For the first time in a while, I felt calm. The cool air on my face was exactly what I needed. I planned to walk to the end of the street, then turn around and head home. Then I felt it. Not a sound, not a movement. Just this sudden, cold grip at the back of my neck, hair standing on ends like something was watching me. My breath caught. I turned and looked over my shoulder. Under one of the few dim streetlights stood someone or something. Tall, thin, draped in a black hoodie. Hunched forward, disjointed, like its bones weren't where they should be. Or maybe, like it didn't have any at all. The darkness around it felt heavier, thicker. It didn't look like it was wearing black. It was blackness itself. There was a strange aura clinging to it, like a dark haze, pulsing against the light. At first, its head was bowed, staring at the ground. Then, slowly, it lifted it, in a jerky, unnatural motion. Dread spread from my stomach, up my chest, and down my arms and legs. Goosebumps erupted across my skin. Then it looked at me. I didn't see eyes. Its face was just a dark, hollow pit. But I felt them. Locked onto me, I froze. Then it moved. Its steps were jerky, uncoordinated. Like every joint in its body bent the wrong way. It twitched, glitched, staggered forward in a way no human should. I wanted to scream, but my legs had already made the decision for me. I turned and ran, took a sharp left onto a side street I barely knew, praying it would loop around to my place. I hadn't brought my phone. I hadn't even locked the door. I'd thought I'd be out 10 minutes max. But now something was following me. And no matter how fast I ran, I could hear it behind me. Those erratic, twitchy footsteps getting closer. The street had no lights, just moonlight casting a soft glow. But somehow, no matter how fast I ran, I could still see it. Every time I glanced back, it was closer. When I finally exited the street, I saw the familiar corner shop. My apartment was nearby. I sprinted the rest of the way, flung the door shut, locked it, and yanked the curtains closed in the living room. Heart pounding, lungs burning, I stared at the front door, expecting it to knock. Or worse, for the doorknob to start turning. Silence. No knocking, no footsteps. Nothing. just my own labored breathing. I told myself I imagined it. Maybe it was stress, insomnia, residual heartbreak, but I couldn't shake how real it had felt. I started to relax, took a deep, calming breath, about to sit down. Then, I saw it. A silhouette, just a shadow, slowly crawling up the porch steps, twitching, glitching, unnatural. It reached the window and stood still. Its dark outline cast a warped shape against the curtain, right where I stood. Then suddenly, a deafening scream shattered the silence. The sound was like metal tearing through flesh, layered with static. A scream that hit something deep inside me. I slapped both hands over my mouth to stop myself from screaming. Then, everything went black. I woke up in bed. It was morning. I didn't remember getting into bed, didn't remember falling asleep. I just woke up. I spent the next few days telling myself it was a nightmare, a vivid hallucination brought on by stress and trauma. Then, a few mornings later, I went to the corner shop for milk. As I stepped outside, I paused. Across the street, I saw it. The same road from that dream. No streetlights, same overgrown hedges, same cracked pavement. One of the houses had a pink tricycle in the yard, right where I remembered it. I walked a little further down the road just to be sure. Everything matched. That was the moment I stopped calling it a dream. I don't know what followed me home that night, or what really happened after I blacked out. But sometimes, day or night, I catch something. A flicker of movement in the corner of my eye. And when I turn, there's nothing there. I don't stay outside after dark anymore. If I go out with friends, I stay the night. I'll crash on a couch, book a room, anything to avoid walking alone at night. A few months later, I moved again. This time to an apartment complex, less isolated. 6th floor, no porch, no street, no shadows on the stairs, at least, not yet. Yeah, that's usually when the sequel starts, isn't it? But for now, we've reached the end of our little midnight trilogy. 3 stories, 3 shadows, and hopefully, no new roommates. If you've made it this far, congrats. Either you're brave, sleepless, or slightly unhinged. All excellent qualities around here. If you liked these stories, hit that like button like it owes you rent, and if you really liked them, consider subscribing. I drop more horror than a creaky basement door during a blackout. And remember, trust your instincts, ignore the footsteps, and maybe, just maybe, don't look back. Until next time, stay weird, stay safe, and keep the lights on. Seriously.